So this pastime is echoed, you can say, in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Lila. So Mahaprabhu Lila, he was doing one dance in Srivas Thakur. This is before Mahaprabhu started the Nagar Sankertan movement, street kirtan. So he was doing these private kirtans in the house of Srivas Anga, in the house of Srivas. And one time Srivas, during one of the kirtans, one of Srivas's children dies. And, there's great lamentation by the wives, and Srivas kind of intuits something's going on. He goes back to the wives and he chastises them, basically. He speaks like Atma Tattva Gyan to them and chastises them and says that their lamentation disturbs the kirtan of Mahaprabhu. Then he would drown himself in the Ganga and give them something to cry about, like very heavy with them. And then he goes back to the kirtan, is in ecstasy, when Mahaprabhu was all night doing kirtan. Finally, the night comes to an end, and Mahaprabhu senses something is not 100% ecstatic. There's something that is somewhat sullied. That's probably too strong of a word. The atmosphere. And in case Srivas tells me, I had one son that died, but I couldn't bear the thought of your ecstasy being disturbed by that. So, I took care of it. I settled it. Mahaprabhu was no. This is totally inauspicious. Those who are dear to Bhagavan, those who are dear to the devotee of Bhagavan is also dear to Bhagavan himself. Aham bhakta paradhina yaswa tantra ivaduja sadhu begrasta hridaya bhaktayar bhakta jana priya. This is the first verse spoken by Narayana to Durvas Muni, that I am not at all independent. Haswa tantra is like I'm not dependent. I am completely bound by my devotees. Aham bhakta paradhina. And because these sadhus have given their hearts completely over to me, even those who are devoted to those sadhus, those persons are also very dear to me. So Mahaprabhu couldn't tolerate that this had happened, that some inauspiciousness was there. So Mahaprabhu himself calls the jiva back to that body, and the jiva begins also speaking Atma Tattva to all the lamenting relatives. And then after that, he departs. And all is good, all is wonderful and excellent. So it's an amazing pastime, and this pastime happens actually right before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes sannyas. So there's some indication in the pastime where Mahaprabhu is thinking about, in response to Srivas Thakur. Srivas Thakur said, "How can I disturb your ecstasy even with the death of my own son?" And Mahaprabhu responds to that saying, "How can I leave such a devotee as you?" So they were like, "What, leave? What you talking about, leave?" It was a subtle indication that he was about to depart from Navadvip and perform his sannyas lila. In any case, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we celebrated his disappearance day, 108th disappearance day a couple of days ago. And he has written one prayer about this pastime in his Gita Mala called Shoka Shatana. The prayers that cuts the rope of lamentation, basically. As we've been discussing in the course of our unpacking of this pastime, one of the angas of bhakti is not to be overwhelmed by shoka and other strong emotions. That's actually an anga of bhakti. One of the doorway angas, which is considered the important angas that are indispensable in practice. Because if the psyche is overwhelmed with strong emotions like shoka, etc., then how can Mukunda sit in that mind? One verse is quoted by Rupa Goswami to the effect, how can Mukunda sit in the mind or a psyche that is overwhelmed by strong emotions such as lamentation, etc.? So this is even considered an anga of bhakti, does not be overwhelmed. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Gita Mala has composed 13 prayers which are supposed to remove or cut the lamentation in the heart. And so I'm going to read those prayers because I went to sleep super late last night due to extenuating circumstances. My whole gear is on the floor. I'm a little bit disheveled right now. So I said, okay, I didn't want to cancel. So I said, let me read this and we maybe have some discussion if you like. But the prayers are amazing. You can read along if you like. If you go to KK Songs or something like that, KK Songs, you can go to KK Songs Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And then you can click his Gita Mala, and then you'll see the whole category of prayers, 13 of them, called Shoka Shatana. So I'll begin the reading of the narration here. And I'll make a few comments along the way. But before I do all of that, let me do a little Mongol Charan here. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaktan Vitam Shah Om Akyantamirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Ina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadha Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Hari Om Tat Sat. Shoka Shatana, the narration begins. This is composed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. In the evening twilight, within the privacy of Srivas Pandit's courtyard, the cream-lustered jewel, Lord Goramani, raised a most auspicious vibration by his chanting of Hari Kirtan, which he personally accompanied by dancing in various playful moods. Accompanied by the playing of the mridanga drum and kartalas, and amidst occasional victorious shouts of Jai, Jai, the dramatic dance of the Lord dispelled the grief of all those who witnessed it. Then, becoming madly intoxicated in supreme ecstatic love, all the assembled devotees completely forgot themselves and incessantly began to dance and chant wildly, surrounding Lord Gaurasundar. At this time, within the inner chamber of Srivas's house, one of his sons suddenly died due to some disease, as ordained by the will of providence. Due to separation from the boy, all of the women of the household began to lament and cry out in a loud voice. I always like to quote this verse from Prahlad Stuti. You all know it, should know it by now. Yasmat priya apriya viyoga samyoga janma shokatina sakala yoni shuddhahimana. I always like to quote this verse, where the living entities, they are, by providence, they are brought together with that which is displeasing, and by the same providence, they are separated from that which is pleasing, like children, wives, salary, health, etc. And as a result of this experience in the material world, that which you don't want, you get plenty of. And that which you really desire, you don't get any of it. This is the experience of the souls in this world. So Prahlad Maharaj says, such being the case, the hearts of the souls are always burning in the fire of lamentation. Sakala Yonishu, everyone, all species of life, from the insect up to Lord Brahma, this is the experience. Dukkosha api dukkha mata diyaham. They try to find a remedy for their dukkha, but their remedy is itself dukkha. Because of the bodily concept of life, they don't really know the solution. Bhumam Brahmami, in this way, they are wandering the universe. Vadame Tavadasa Yoga. So Prahlad Maharaj says, actually, I think the only solution is to be engaged in your Dasa Yoga, your Bhakti Yoga. So you give me instruction on that. So here the wise are having the experience of all the conditioned souls, that which is undesirable, like separation from a dear son, has come to them and they're lamenting. So what to do about that? So the last prayer here in the first song. Now Bhaktivinoda fears that the transcendental mellows of the Lord's Kirtana will be disturbed by the uprising of such loud crying sounds. However, Srivas Pandit has now understood the cause of the sound and has personally entered the house. So just a cool little note here. We know from Raganuga Bhajan, Seva Sadaka Rupena, Siddha Rupena Chatrahi, Tabhava Lipsuna Karya, Rajaloka Anusarita. So this is one of the main instructions for performing Rag Bhajan, that we are to render service following in the footsteps of the Brajaloka. So there are two categories of Brajaloka we've discussed many times. The Brajaloka in Gaur Lila and the Brajaloka in Krishna Lila. So you are to follow the Brajaloka in Gaur Lila with your Sadhaka Deha. Seva Sadhaka Rupana. Your Sadhaka Rupa means the body itself. You emulate how the Brajaloka and Gaur Lila perform Bhakti Yoga. They perform Bhakti Yoga as if sadhakas. And in your contemplative life, you perform seva in your contemplative world to following the Brajaloka and Krishna Lila. So we discussed many times the statements in these classes. But here in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's meditation, he's contemplating himself as a member of Mahaprabhu's, Navadvip Lila, which is also part of the contemplative life of what was known as traditional Gaudiya Vaishnavas. If you study the Gaur Govindarchana Paditi of Dhyan Chandra, all the beginning meditations begin with contemplating oneself as a Brahmin and Gaur Mahaprabhu's Navadvip Lila. So you're getting a sense of this in this prayer that he's saying he's at the kirtan of Mahaprabhu and Srivas Anga, and he's hearing the loud crying of the wives of Srivas, and he's like afraid that the loud crying is going to disturb the kirtan, but he's saying that Srivas Thakur has caught note of it, and he will take care of the situation. So it's quite, anyway, we're getting a sort of a template, I've been using this word quite a bit these days, of how devotees meditate. This is how devotees, we don't try to meditate on the void or the emptiness or something like that, but we meditate on the Leela and see ourselves, at least at a certain point in development, as participating in the Leela from a certain angle of vision. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, I'm hearing that loud crying, it's going to disturb I'm scared about that. But Srivas Thakur has caught hold of the problem, he will go and settle it. Next prayer, entering into the inner chamber, Srivas began to pacify all of the women there by giving them spiritual instructions that were as sweet as nectar. Okay, let's hear it. He said, look here, you crazy ladies. You all lament uselessly. For what kind of unhappiness can there possibly be in ecstatic love for Krishna? So this is sweet as nectar. Jaya. Whoever has Krishna for his eternal son never has to lament for anything. Although if one becomes attached to that which is temporary, then everything is lost. You have all come into this material world for the purpose of worshiping Krishna. So now you shall all become situated again in the eternal absolute truth. As long as you are existing in this body, you shall all cultivate love and attachment for Lord Krishna, knowing him to be your real wealth, real friend, and your very life and soul. All of the followers of this body, namely brothers, friends, husbands, and sons, should be accepted as being only temporary relationships. We've already discussed this much in hearing the Jiva speak to Chittaketu. Whoever wants to hold on to husbands or sons will not be able to keep them, for all these relationships are only temporary. Even if your son is sitting in your very lap, you still cannot protect him. But when his bad fruit of reaction is fructified, then his present karma is finished, and he will not be able to remain here any longer. By accepting this type of temporary happiness and distress, many other living entities are now being degraded into lower species of life, falling far, far away from Krishna's lotus feet. I'm going to read that again. By accepting this type of temporary happiness and distress, many other living entities are now being degraded into lower species of life, falling far, far away from Krishna's lotus feet. Therefore, you should all give up your temporary lamentation right now and just become absorbed in the bliss of the Lord's holy names. All of Bhaktivinoda's desires are now being fulfilled by hearing Srivas speak such nice eternal truths. That's how the second prayer ends. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is like, Jai, such nice instructions he was given. All right, next, I think the statements are self-evident. I'm appreciating how the absorption in raga and dvesha is leading to our utter bewilderment and sorrow. Itra dvesha samutena, dvandva mohena bharata, sarvabhutani samoham sarge yanti parantapa. Krishna says this also in Gita. This verse in the Gita comes in the context of Krishna saying that he knows everything, but no one knows me. That's verse number 26, I think, chapter 26. He says, I know past, present, and future and everything, but no one knows me. So why don't they know you? And so Krishna, in response to that, giving this answer, Itra Dvesha Samutena. As soon as they take birth, they're immediately deluded by dualities. What dualities? Itra Dvesha Samutena, the imprints of raga and dvesha, basically, attachment and aversion. And so their whole life is spent preoccupied with the imprints of raga and dvesha, that they can't turn their consciousness toward anything beyond the constriction created by those imprints. And in this way, they remain bound up in the material energy. So this is in other words, it's not that they can't know me. It's not that they can't reach me, but they're so preoccupied with the imprints of raga and dvesha that they just never give it up. And in this way, they are falling and rising in the ocean of the material world. So if you make Krishna as your son or your friend or your beloved, then we don't have to lament like this. Otherwise, you have to lament and you keep rising and falling. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur seems to be very much satisfied by these instructions. Next prayer. Offering all of your wealth, relatives, body, and entire household unto Krishna in dedication. Just remember him always with a purified heart. So then why are you exclaiming, my son, in great sadness? Krishna has simply taken his own devotee just to suit his own happiness. It's telling us how we should think. Krishna is causing all things to take place just according to his own sweet will. In light of that, all your ideas of happiness and distress are simply ignorant mental concoctions. Whatever Krishna's desire is, you must accept only that is actually good. Renouncing all of your separate personal desires, relieve yourselves of this unnecessary botheration. Krishna gives you everything. Krishna takes everything away. Krishna maintains everyone or kills everyone whenever he likes, according to his own sweet will. If someone maintains some desire that is contrary to Krishna's desire, then her wish does not become fruitful. Indeed, she only gets trouble and anguish. Therefore, rejecting all of your lamentation, just listen to the chanting of Krishna's holy name, which is going on now out in the courtyard. From this, you will get the topmost transcendental bliss, and all of your desires will be fulfilled. Thus, Bhaktivinoda begs at Srivas Pandit's lotus feet the power to completely surrender his soul to Krishna in life or death. I like this last prayer. He uses the word Atmanivedana Shakti, the Shakti to do Atmanivedana, as being described in this particular prayer. I'm praying to Srivas Thakur, please give me this Atmanivedana Shakti, this potency by which I can actually surrender in this way. And what is a surrender? No separate interest. No separate interest. This is also called Pritak Bhava, on the separateness. Actually, there is no separate reality. There's only one reality. Advaya Gyan Tattva. That is the only reality that exists. But we have a sense that there's a separate reality. Dvitiya and Biniveshata, we get absorbed in that. And so I'm a separate entity looking out at a separate world, and therefore I pursue separate interests. As a result of this separateness, there's so much pain is coming. But there is no separateness. Everything is actually a manifestation of God, his play, his desire. So God has given his devotee, and now he's taking it away. What is the problem for you? If your interest is in his service, but if your interest is not in seva, but rather your interest is in enjoying of some gross or subtle point, then you are connected to the world of sorrow. By Krishna's arrangement, some seva has come, but you have interpreted in terms of your own enjoyment, which is, kind of natural. We're conditioned souls after all. So now Krishna has removed that seva for his own purposes, and you lament because the desire was not for seva, the desire was for enjoyment. So it is with also our relationships with friends and children and so on in this material world. We somehow or other, the concept comes to enjoy them. That is what it means to be conditioned, of course. Instead of saying that, some seva has been given by God. This wife has been given by God for seva. These children have been given by God for seva. This job has been given by God for seva. This congregation that I have the preacher has been given by God for seva. Now we think, this thing has come, that thing I will enjoy. So in this way, thinking like that, when God takes away the seva, because now he wants some other seva to be done, then you have to lament. But if we have the spirit, then the lamentation can at least be controlled. If not existing, means that it doesn't mean like the psyche, well, of course, when there's separation, just like if a hammer hits your foot, you're going to grimace, but you're not going to be absorbed in that. It's just, okay, ouch. So same thing happens on the psychic level. It can be like an ouch moment. Oh, separation, ouch. But you don't get absorbed and identify with it, because now the Savior's, Krishna wants some different Savior from me. That same Krishna who saved Parikshit Maharaj in the womb of his mother allows him to be cursed to die in 7 days. So the son of Shamika Rishi, he thought, oh, anyway, Parikshit Maharaj is so powerful, he can counteract the curse. But they knew he would not counteract the curse. So this verse is quoted at the end of the 18th chapter of Bhagavatam, that it is the nature of the devotees that even when defamed, criticized, persecuted, blasphemed, mistreated, that they just simply tolerate all such things, knowing that this is Krishna. They say, oh, Krishna has come in this form now. So Shamika Rishi, he knew that Parikshit Maharaj would not retaliate. And therefore, he felt very sorry for the situation. And then later on, of course, Parikshit Maharaj got the news he was cursed to die in 7 days, and he didn't retaliate. Oh, now God has come in this form. So it is only possible if there is no pratak bhav, the mood of separateness. But if they're pratak bhav, then when this comes up, we're devastated. Okay, next prayer. So I like how he ends this. Dear Srivasa Thakur, I'm praying for the Atmanivedan Shakti. Give me the Atmanivedan Shakti, otherwise I will surrender. Next verse for prayer, I think this is 4th one. So Srivas continued, all of you together should consider the real fate of the boy, and you should immediately discontinue any bewilderment and grief that may be in your disturbed hearts. The Supreme Lord of all the 14 worlds is the youthful son of Nanda Maharaj, and now he has become the son of Mother Shachi by personally descending in Nadia. This very same Gokul Chanda is now dancing in my courtyard with his most confidential devotees, all completely overwhelmed with ecstatic bliss. My boy has given up his body while hearing the singing of the Lord's holy names coming from the kirtana out in the courtyard. Therefore, he certainly has died while overwhelmed with love for the Lord. If I would be so fortunate as to get such an auspicious death as this, then I will certainly be able to easily cross over the ocean of material existence. All of you together, just consider this one judgment. What will your lamentation and disturbed hearts do to help the situation? If you all do not become pacified by these instructions, then you will only cheat yourselves out of tasting transcendentally ecstatic mellows in the long run. Not only will you cheat yourself, but you will induce me to leave this world by plunging myself in the waters of the Ganga. Thus, Bhaktivinoda is witnessing this entire calamity in progress. Again, I love that he's witnessing in his contemplative life this whole unfolding of the Leela. Probably Srivasa Thakur is speaking so nicely, the wise are not looking fully compelled by his preaching. So he just gave an ultimatum, like, listen, if you don't stop this crying, then I'm going to jump in the Ganga, and then you'll really have something to cry about. Okay, so next prayer. Hearing these words of Srivas Pandit, all those chaste and faithful ladies gave up their lamentation for the dead son, Jaya, because Srivas has satisfied their minds by informing them of the transcendental mellows of Lord Hari. So Siddhartha asked this question yesterday. He says, should we give these sorts of instructions to people, today when they're lamenting? Because it is largely viewed as insensitive and so on. And we were trying to say that my answer was yes. The answer is absolutely yes. These are the sort of instructions that the souls need. But there are other factors that go into making such a presentation compelling, such as their trust in you, your own spiritual shakti, etc. There are many factors that go into speaking something, and it has that impact on the psyche. Here it's mentioned that he informed them of the transcendental mellows. So at the end of the day, the living entities are looking for rasa. So Krishna consciousness means Krishna bhakti rasa, bhavitamati. So the rasa is it is the experience of rasa that makes us enjoy a horror flick, for example, at least growing up. I don't do horror, or you watch a sad movie. Even though it's sad, there's something in it that makes you like it. And so that something in it is the rasa. So there's another thing that rasa can be generated. Well, even the secular rasa that is talked about by like Bart Mooney and the secular racist. Then they're able to, the idea is they're able to generate an experience of rasa just by their poetry. A lot of the rasa is experienced by poetry. That's why if you study Anchalila, especially of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu is like singing or thinking of something, Swarup Damodar immediately sings the poetry of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the poetry of Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing that, he experiences the rasa. So there's some basic understanding in rasa culture that just by poetry, the rasa can be experienced. Even now you can see when you hear like a really good poem, even like, especially when accompanied with music, people become absorbed in that. They're getting some rasa out of that. Today, that's being very liberal here, but giving you a sense of the idea. Also the drama of the culture. So drama means the acting part, the music part, the dancing part, all of this was there to create the experience of rasa. So it looks like Srivas Thakur has empowerment to generate the experience of rasa. So it's not just a dry knowledge, so to speak, but it's the conveying of rasa through the words, the conveying of rasa through the philosophy even. And so when Levinsis experience that rasa, then they become satisfied at heart. The mind is just looking for something to get absorbed in. So once the mind gets absorbed in something, then it loses the pain of material bondage. Or say it the opposite way, say it conversely. When the mind can't get absorbed, that is where this pain actually comes in. That's why people like watching movies, because it allows the mind to get a little avesha, a little absorption for a period of 2 hours or so. Or they watch like a whole series of a show, then they can enter into a whole nother world and experience vicariously the emotions of the characters, and which can even be sadness, but it's a joyful feeling, even though it's a sad thing going on. You feel joy because you're actually temporarily suspended from the material ego, and there's an experience of the rasa from the absorption in another world, basically. So anyway, a very powerful, Bhagavad Gita speaker, Hari Katha, Krishna Katha speaker. Through the poetry, they can create rasa, the experience of rasa, and then the hearts become pacified. Their heart may be filled with lamentation, depression, this, that, and the other. And they come into the sangha of Hari Kirtan, Hari Katha, and the speaker is empowered, and he's generating some experience of rasa through his speech. So there's that experience of rasa that allows the living to, at least for a time, suspend himself from the material ego, the ahankara, so to speak. Be absorbed in another world and then get the fruit of that absorption. In this case, pacification. Okay, I'm going to finish this prayer. I'll make a little pause here. It takes a lot longer to read these prayers tonight. Remember. Okay, so this is stanza 2. I think we're in song 5. Then Srivas again came out into the courtyard and, overwhelmed with joy, resumed dancing with Lord Chaitanya and loudly sang the glories of the son of Nanda Maharaj, completely forgetting about what had just happened. Amazing. The boy had expired only 1.5 hours after dark, but out in the courtyard, no one had known anything due to the loud kirtana. Therefore, then for 9 hours, there was continuous chanting of the auspicious holy names. Thus, the entire night had elapsed in this ecstatic singing. Then the kirtan stopped, and Lord Gohari said, "Why am I feeling some unhappiness today? I can understand that something inauspicious has happened in this house, which has robbed me of my bliss." Then the devotees related to the Lord the story of the death of Srivas' son. Hearing this news, the Lord loudly exclaimed, "Oh no, what has happened? Now the core of my heart has become pierced with so much unbearable pain. Why didn't you inform me of this calamity when it had just happened?" Now Bhaktivinoda has completely lost himself in the affection that the Lord shows to his own devotees. Okay, I want to read one more. Next one. Then hearing these words, the Lord, Srivas Pandit, began rolling on the ground, crying out, "Please hear me, O Lord. I am simply not able to tolerate any disturbance or interruption of the ecstatic mellows of your kirtan. Only one of my sons has died. O Lord, And has that really made me upset? Even if all my sons die, then I will certainly get more than enough happiness by seeing you. I would certainly die on the spot if I were to interrupt your dancing, O Lord. That is why I did not inform you of this bad news, for I was dreading the calamity of disturbing your ecstasy. Lord, if you will kindly grant us your permission now, then we shall take the boy's body and perform the proper funeral rites. Hearing this much from the mouth of Srivas Pandit, the jewel of the twice born, Lord Gaurasundar, then broke down and began to weep piteously on the spot. Why is he weeping? He says, crying and crying, the Lord thought within himself, how could I possibly abandon such loving servitors and go elsewhere by taking sannyas? He's thinking this. If I were to do so, my heart will certainly split. Hearing this type of talk, Bhaktivinoda's mind becomes somewhat fearful. So Mahaprabhu in the Leela, if you read Chaitanya Bhagavatam, he also says this out loud. He doesn't say the sannyas part, but he says, how can I leave all of these loving servitors? So they're like, what do you mean leave? What are you talking about, leave? It was like very subtle, but everyone caught it. We were talking about leave, and they all kind of like, you know, their hearts kind of like drop in their stomach. I get a sense of that from reading the past time. Like, what are you saying, leave? Like, what is that, the purport of that? Of course, they will find out soon enough when Mahaprabhu takes sannyas. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur is meditating on this, and he's becoming fearful, also knowing Mahaprabhu's mind, of course, from Chaitanya Bhagavatam. Okay, I'm going to take a quick pause here, but this is actually very nice. It's kind of you start to get more invested in the pastime as it Bhaktivinoda Thakur is explaining it. Maybe I would like to continue it, but I'll make a quick pause here and see if anyone wants to say anything. I don't want to keep you. We do normally go to 9:30, but I usually stop at 9 and take questions and so on. Shangovi says, seemed like Srivas Thakur was able to understand the philosophy, but his wives were not. Well, it says that they were pacified, so it seems like they could understand also. Aren't they the same devotees who would wait for food to come to their home in 3 claps? Well, yes. I never knew it as a day. I knew it as a hymn. That is not a pun on 2022 politics. But I always heard the story that Srivas Thakur, that was like nature of his surrender. I guess it may have been the nature of his wife's surrender as well. I don't know, but it seems that they were in fact pacified by the words of Srivas Thakur. As I mentioned, they said the mellows generated from his speech was able to pacify their heart. So if that is to be believed, then they were also pacified. Does anyone else want to say anything? Okay, that's what I was wondering. If they had that much faith, why lament? Yeah. Lamentation is one of those weird things that surprises you. Interesting. It shouldn't surprise us because we live in the material world, but the way that providence works, you can't expect you don't know what's coming. And so oftentimes you're just taken by surprise and by the eventualities of life. One may get caught in lamentation despite having faith. And so sometimes for that reason, sadhu sangha is always imperative in the life, especially in the life of a sadhaka. Maybe this is demonstrated in Gaur Lila, which is kind of sadhaka lila. They're living as if sadhakas, so to speak. So maybe this lesson is always there. The being overwhelmed by lamentation doesn't have to mean an absence of faith. But you're just taken by surprise and you need the assistance of sadhus to, again, uplift. So such is the nature. Sadhu Sangha is the beginning, middle, and end of Krishna consciousness. It is the way, the truth, and the light. And Srila Jiva Goswami is writing this. He says, because the Abhideya, he writes this sentence in Bhakti Sundarbha. He says, because the Abhideya is bhakti, and because bhakti comes from sadhus, therefore sadhu sangha is the Abhideya. So sadhu sangha, I'm looking at the comment here. So sadhu sangha is the Abhideya. Someone says, what is the Abhideya of this Christian consciousness movement? We can give answers. Sadhu sangha is the Abhideya. Sadhu sangha. Otherwise, without sadhu sangha, what is our bhakti also? Our bhakti will go to zero also. Many times I see this happen to devotees here in New York and elsewhere. They don't live with devotees so much. They say, I'll chant Hare Krishna. I'm like, the hell you will. Because see how long you chant Hare Krishna for, bro. Oh, how strong your Hare, how strong is it going to be in the face of powerful Maya that attacks inside and out? So the Abhideya of Bhakti is Sadhu Sangha, actually. That is the main Abhideya. You can say, Bhakti Yoga in the form of chanting this, that, and other. No, main Abhideya is Sadhu Sangha. That is the main Abhideya. And in the company of sadhus, then the other angas of bhakti can manifest. Otherwise, basically not. This may give a little sense of the meaning here. You know this verse, Atashi Krishna Namadi, Ambhavekrayam Indriyai. That the senses are not able to grab the holy name of Krishna, etc., pastimes and so on. So I always find this verse particularly confusing. Because like, when I desire to chant, and then the holy name was coming out. So what do you mean my senses can't chant Hare Krishna? It's like you're not chanting the name is dancing on your tongue. It's like, well, okay, that's nice poetry, but I'm the one, chanting. It feels that way. So it feels like we are the performance of bhakti, but not that bhakti is performing us, so to speak, and using us as the conduit in which it's manifesting its own glory, which is actually the ontological truth of the matter according to Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. In a sense, the material senses cannot perform bhakti because they are material, and bhakti is a spiritual potency, the essence of the Pradini Shakti. So being an ontologically superior category or potency, you cannot perform bhakti in that sense. But this is very abstract. That it doesn't exactly land for the mind, because it's like, no, I'm clearly doing bhakti, like I'm the one doing it. It's obvious. So maybe this is one way to think about it. If there were no sadhu sangha, how much bhakti you would be doing? And if my own lived experience tells me anything, it wouldn't be much. It starts to dwindle. I'm having a distinct memory of 2014. Kartik, I was chanting 64 rounds every day. Then after Kartik, I continued the vrata. Many times these vratas, the echo of the vrata lasts for some months after you take it. And then I went to Goa for a month. I was doing a yoga training there. I was trying to get some of my strength back because I had a year of sickness in 2013, basically. So I was trying to get some of my strength back, and I went to Goa for a month. Like, Goa's, famous for like raves and parties and yogis. So I went there for a yoga intensive. Turns out that my teacher, he was a German guy who met Srila Prabhupada. And when he would go for these evening walks, and I went with Sankalpa, a young boy, and I would, go with the evening walks with him. And he was like, so where are you guys going after this? And I was like, Vrindavan. He was like, are you a Krishna Bhakta? And I was like, I was trying to hide it in Goa. I was trying to not make it obvious. And I was like, yeah, I'm a Christian Bhakta. He's like, do you know Srila Prabhupada? I was like, Prabhupada's movement. He said, I met Srila Prabhupada in 1976. I was this young. And he said, I love the dogs of Vrindavan. They're so sweet. So well, because he had like 10 dogs. He was really into dogs. He said, I love the dogs of Vrindavan. Amazing, beautiful. And Prabhupada was so beautiful. And he just started glorifying Prabhupada for like half an hour. And all the students were there hearing, because this is like their teacher. And he was just talking to me and Sankalpa and just glorifying Prabhupada and glorifying Vrindavan and glorifying Brijbasi. It's like spontaneously. And I remember laughing about it because I was like, wow, Krishna, when he wants to manifest himself, he just manifests himself by his own will. I was consciously dissimulating my devotional. Aside from wearing the Kanti Mala, I was not trying to present as a devotee so I could just do my thing. But I was like, when Krishna wants to manifest himself, he just manifests. Then after that, everyone kept asking me, what is Krishna? What is Vrindavan? All the students, they were curious after hearing this clarification. Anyway, so I was there in Goa. And while being there in Goa, I wasn't having that sadhu sangha. And then Sankalpa was a young boy at that time. He was into smoking weed mostly, not so much into doing bhakti. And so the people there, they were super nice. They were super into their yoga practice. They would like wake up at 4 o'clock, start practice at 4:30 or 5. They would do practice for like 3-4 hours continuously every day. Super serious people and super nice. A lot of them were like following some sort of ethics, although many of them did eat fish and meat, and I was kind of over that. But I just saw how my bhakti was just like a little, like a like having a cracked pot in it, whatever little bhakti I had, which is like seeping out. So after a month, when we get back to Vrindavan, I've told this many times, but I always like telling it. After a month, when I got back to Vrindavan, I was so happy to see the devotees. I probably started crying. For all the devotees you would criticize, call them neophytes and all sorts of names, I was happy to see them also. I was like, oh my God, it's so good to, oh my God, how could I have gone a month without being around devotee Sangha and seeing how my bhakti just dwindled? So this might be a meaning of this verse, Atashi Krishna Namadi Namba Vekra. What bhakti you will do without sadhu sangha? Actually, you will do no bhakti. Your bhakti will go away. No strength. You have no strength, no shakti to do bhakti. So bhakti and Bhagavan, they manifest where there's that congregation of sadhus. That's why that punya tirtha nishevana, go to the tirthas and do seva. Because why the tirthas? Because so many sadhus are there. That's why the instruction is given. Go live in Braj, Shishnan. Why go live in? Because so many sadhus are there. Then you can do bhakti easily because the sadhu sangha is there. So this conviction should be there in our heart that the abhideya is sadhu sangha, actually. And in the company of sadhu sangha, the other angas of bhakti manifest. And without sadhu sangha, you'll see these angas of bhakti, they start drifting away. And no potency will be there. Maybe a little bit, the holy name will stay for some time because, we made some vows and the imprint of that. But it was so even if you have faith, that was when somehow I got here from that. Even if their faith is there, sadhu sangha is required. Joshua says this is a good verse supporting the primary abhideya of sadhu sangha. Yeah, it's a nice verse. Better than this, well, not better than this, but the next verse after this, 11.3.31. And then line is coming, Bhaktiya Sanjataya Bhaktiya. That bhakti comes from bhakti, a very famous statement of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that verse we should understand, bhakti comes from sadhu sangha. That is the bhakti that they're meaning in that 11.3.31. Those who remind us of Krishna, and we ourselves are reciprocating reminding of Krishna, then Krishna removes all the, sins of those persons, 11.3.31. And this way, bhakti that comes from bhakti is the solution. I'm looking at a private message, some idea that I have, which I still think is a good idea. Siddha for real. We should explore that as a proper moneymaker. Okay, Siddha, you want to say something? It looks like the yellow hand and stuff.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, a couple of comments, but first, I wanted to let you know, in terms of data and statistics, we have 6 people here in the audience, of which 3 are from Michigan. So your Michigan audience and followers and fans are increasing by the day. Okay, so I had a question, a couple of questions. One that, if you look at the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and specifically this prayer, you were mentioning that the shloka, that seva sadhika rupena, that one should in this body serve as an associate or meditate on serving as an associate of Lord Chaitanya. And then in his bhava body, in his mental conception, think about serving the Vrindavan pastimes. But here it seems he is also serving mentally the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned in today's class also.
So in that sense, both conceptions, when you say Braja, so then both Leelas are Braja only, the Mayapur Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Leela of Krishna and Vrindavan. So then what is meant by that in the Sadhaka Rupa you are participating or you think?
So the idea there is because sadhana has to be done in this body only, right? Not only with the mind, but also with the body and the speech, right? So in the verse, as the commentary coming from Sri Vishwanath and Sri Jiva Goswami. So how do you engage your body and your speech and your mind? So you should engage your body, speech, and mind, emulating the Sadhaka Lila of Mahaprabhu, basically. They all live like sadhakas, basically, as if they're, practicing Krishna consciousness to get bhav and prem and so on. So we should use our gross body like that. But in your contemplative life, you should think of serving the Brijbasis and Krishna Lila. So it's saying here, what you're saying, I was mentioning in class also, well, they're also serving Mahaprabhu in the contemplative life. So yes, so with this Salika Deha, you're doing the Angas of Bhakti, you're doing Sadhu Sangha, you're hearing Harikatha, speaking and all that. That's with the gross body. But in the contemplative life, you may think of yourself as, or it could be possible to envision oneself as a follower of Lord Chaitanya and his Navadvip Leela. As you know, there's a Navadvip section, Nitya Navadvip section of the spiritual world. At least that is a conviction of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So how do you get to that Nitya Navadvip section? So it has something to do with how you think of yourself inside. So in the Gaura Govindarchana Padati, they've given all sorts of contemplative mantras by which you see yourself as a Brahmana in Navadvip Leela, serving Mahaprabhu's Navadvip Leela and Nitya Navadvip. So that can also be an aspect of your inner contemplation. But still the outside body has to do something too, right? So the outside body lives like the devotees in Gaur Leela, and outside body means the body, mind, and speech. But inside you see yourself as serving in Mahaprabhu Leela. But even in Mahaprabhu Leela, all these devotees, they also think of themselves as some Brajaloka and Krishna Leela. So both contemplations can be there. So,
okay, now you gave us a reference, the book by Dhyan Chandra Goswami. But as we understand, there are like these two paths, internal path and external path. And the external path is being elaborated by Dhyan Chandra Goswami, and then internal path by Raghunath Das Goswami. So how can we refer a book which is giving the internal path? Well, we are striving to follow the internal path.
Well, so this is a hot topic amongst Gaudiya groups. Are the internal path and the external path mutually exclusive? Some devotees say they're mutually exclusive. Other devotees argue that they're not. And it's, in this way, argumentation will always go on in the material worlds. So my conviction is that they're not mutually exclusive as such. But in any case, even if they were, so when you're following the internal path, then you have to read the works of Raghunath Das Goswami. Is considered the Acharya of the internal path. And our line, as far as we're told, is following the internal path from Bhaktivinoda Thakur down to the Bhaktisiddhanta, to the Prabhupada, and so on. So then you have to take their works as indications of how the internal path is followed, right? For example, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's work, the Bhajana Rahasya book, for example, where he gives many sort of internal contemplations. These song books, if you want to read the song books, he's giving his inner contemplation. So I say these books are like templates, and they're demonstrating how they did their contemplative life. So if we have to take inspiration for the internal path by these acharyas who are following the internal path, then looking at their templates, you see that meditation on themselves in relationship to Mahaprabhu Leela is a big part of their contemplative life. From Raghunath Das Goswami's Stavavali, the first 2 or 3 prayers are dedicated to Lord Chaitanya. Same with Srila Rupa Goswami's Stavamala. So they're contemplating themselves, of course, in relation to Mahaprabhu. Of course, they also have a lived experience of having a relationship with Mahaprabhu. But taking it as also part of the contemplative life, they're seeing themselves in relationship to Mahaprabhu. So you take hint from the internal path. You sent one prayer to me this morning from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he's lamenting how I didn't get this opportunity. So then that becomes part of his contemplative life. Meditating on himself as bereft of the mercy of Mahaprabhu and yearning for that mercy of Mahaprabhu. So in this way, you take inspiration from these literatures, how they think of themselves inside. So the internal path has got a lot of more suppleness to it, so to speak. It can be molded in different ways. So therefore, it's not as rigid as the external path. Like if you read Gaura Govindarchana Padati, Smartanam Padati, is extremely rigid. Like as soon as you get up in the morning, like for reading it, you would like have to be a sannyasi or like a renunciate. There's no question you will have time for all these, contemplations throughout the day without being, a Babaji or renounced.
It almost sounds like a Vedi mark for the Raganuga path. It's like
Vedi mark, Vidya is not against Raganuga Bhakti. That is one conception that has to be removed from our mind. Vidya is not against Rag mark. It's just that the reason for following a Vidya is very different from Vaidhi Bhakti. In Vaidhi Bhakti, you follow the Vidya because of the Vidya. And Rag mark, you follow the Vidya because of the Ruchi. And if that Vidya isn't a sister to the Ruchi, you reject the Vidya also. So that is the difference between the life of the relationship with Vidyas and Rag mark and Vaidhi Bhakti. And Vaidhi Bhakti, you have no ruchi, so you're depending on the vidya. Otherwise, you're not following anything. You just sleep all day and do sense gratification, which anyway be going on. But at least you got the vidyas to hold it off a little bit. But in Ragmar, they also follow so many vidyas. And like you're saying, from this Gaur Govindarchana Smarana Pariti, the vidya may be even heavier because the ruchi is decidedly clear and they know what they want. And they said these vidyas can help us do that. So it's very rigid. Internal path a little bit more supple. So then, supple is the right word. Anyway, I'm going to use supple. I think it's the right word. So you have to study their works and get inspiration. I'm using this language, saying it kind of like as a template for how we might contemplate ourselves. And if anything, even if you can't take a template, use that as a template for your own. You can just sing those songs and say, "Hey, these words about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, these are my words also. These are my words actually. The way what I wanted to say, he has said it nicely. So I'm going to sing. I'm going to sing these songs to the Lord. I also want to say this, but I couldn't think of the language, and he has said it nicely. So now his prayer becomes my prayer, and that way you're doing Ragmar. It's a very practical Ragmar application.
Thank you, Prabhu. One final comment. In the context of the story, we're hearing this Bengali woman. They stopped wailing after an hour and a half. I'm not sure many devotees have seen Bengali women wailing, but they're infamous for their loud wailing in whole India. Of all the women who love their children the most, is the Bengali women. When they cry, you can imagine it's like the whole city is like an uproar. They're crying is infamous. So for them to stop after an hour and a half is definitely it's a sign of some really good convincing power in the hands of Srivas Thakur. I was just imagining, losing a son. I have seen people lose in my life. People lose their children. It's really horrifying scene, and the hair,
wow,
being able to control. You can only imagine. It's completely amazing.
Yeah, thank you for that. It gives a lot more context for how powerful Srivas Thakur's preaching was. Yeah. And also the ultimatum may have helped as well. If you don't stop crying, I'll drown myself in the Ganga. All right, relax.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, bro.
And Jainitai is also told something here. Is contemplating Mahaprabhu's presence and mercy as it relates to our own participation in the Sankertan movement akin to contemplating ourselves in Gaur Lila? I think the answer is yes, and there's a little bit of no in that also. But I think you can say the answer is largely yes. But in the contemplation in Gaur Lila, you're seeing yourself, like, let's take Bhaktivinoda Thakur's example. He's telling this pastime for Mahaprabhu Lila, and he's seeing himself as a participant in that Lila. So when he's contemplating the Lila and seeing himself as a member amongst the associates, having an angle of vision as the Lila is unfolding. So that is the sort of real sense. I don't want to say real sense, but deeper sense of contemplation there. We have to obviously master our bhajan and our adhikar, but this is the sense of it. Whereas when we contemplate what's going on now, we still kind of see ourselves as the persona of the ahankar that we have. And so it is still participation in Mahaprabhu Lila, but it's having some connection to the material ahankar. So it's not fully realized. We're not fully individuated yet. And so there's not the full sense of that contemplation. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. It is as though Bhaktivinoda Thakur is experiencing the fear of Mahaprabhu leaving us, though he is personally present. Exactly. So you can imagine how that's called the Vaishya, right? This is called rasa, the experience of rasa. Like when you watch it, like again, same example, you watch a good movie, you get totally invested in the character. There's a Vaishya, Swarupa Vaish. You're literally out of your own ego complex into the ego of the character in the movie. And so you start experiencing all their emotions vicariously. If they cry, you may also start crying. If they feel afraid, you also feel afraid. So you can only imagine contemplating in Leela with such a Vaish. then their feelings come to you because you have a sympathetic heart. So that's a very deep sort of contemplation. And the secular rasas, they try to generate that through secular dramas and so on. And devotees, we say this is also eternally possible. So that is kind of the real sense. You hear the Leela and like, I was about to take sannyas, and you like freaking out. You're like shaking a little bit. And what did he mean by that? You know, and so that is contemplation. That's ecstatic life. Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Good luck to us all. You got to be a little deep too. But you don't have to be super duper deep. You just need to know. We just need to know the tattva behind it, and then we can begin to mold our inner worlds accordingly. Okay, maybe we'll pause here for a day. Maybe I'll finish the reading tomorrow. I like this. I like these prayers. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. For so long, I've liked these prayers. Over a decade, I've been reading them, and they're very nice contemplations for cutting lamentation from the heart. So maybe we'll try to finish this tomorrow. I had hoped to finish it today. We can continue our Chittiketu story, but we'll maybe finish this tomorrow. Just because it's very nice to hear Leelas occasionally also. And I'll pause here. Thank y'all very much. Oh, stop. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go Pranandi. Hari Bolo. Hari Bolo. Jai.